over $400,000 in only 6 months, wholesaling houses and one apartment deal. Guess who's back? Chris from California. He's ready to share how he did it. Stand by. Let's get it. Hello, guys. This is Ty, a.k.a. The Flip Man. Guess who's back? My man Chris from Cali, California. And I normally don't bring back students or YouTube subscribers to tell a story, but this is an all-timer. And so he and I have been discussing this one particular deal for the last couple of months on an apartment deal. That's the big deal, but he actually had a couple other deals before that that you really can't sneeze at. So I had to bring him back. You know, we worked out his schedule. He's a very busy guy. He has another business that he runs before he got into real estate. But if you're not familiar with Chris, we did another interview a few months back, maybe around February or March of this year, the date of this particular video. And you can go back. I think it's titled $21,500 in 27 days or something like that. But it's one of probably the last 30 or 40 videos that I did, but it wasn't in this particular year of 2017. So with all of that being said, Chris, welcome back.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Oh, you got it, man. You got it. As I said, we've been talking about this deal for a minute, man.
Yeah.
And
seems like forever, but not really.
You pulled it off. You pulled it off. But before we get into that particular deal, you had a couple other deals that were houses. The big deal was an apartment deal, but you had a couple other deals that were houses, and I'd like for you to share those. I think the two deals, was it in May that you did those two deals?
I did a total of like 5 from January till the halfway point of the year. And
okay.
The 6th one was the apartment deal. But when we did our first video, that was the first deal. That was in January.
Okay.
I think February was dry. We were so excited on the first deal, we stopped the marketing. So we had to like get it going again. The next deal we did was a duplex. That one was kind of interesting because we ended up selling it to a buy and hold investor. So it was a little bit different. We didn't have the same typical margins like we normally shoot for, but still made a lot of money on it because we found an investor that would pay more for it. So that one was.
You want to get into just a Cliff's Note version of those couple of deals between the first deal and the 5th deal?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, here's Mrs. Chris Gomez. She just watched it.
Hey, thank you for allowing Chris to share his story with a lot of people that I think it'll be very useful to send them in the right direction. So
she supported me from day one. When I showed her your videos, she was like, yeah, you could probably do that. So.
Oh, okay. That's what's happening.
Thank you for all the knowledge and teaching him and helping him out all the time. We appreciate it.
Hey, I'm sure those days have been good to you also. Those paydays.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. All right. Thanks.
So, the second deal was the duplex in San Bernardino. That one came from a postcard. It was an absentee owner. That deal was actually pretty interesting because the guy that called me off the postcard was a big time investor that had like 150 rental properties. So he wasn't your typical struggling absentee owner.
Correct.
He told me, he goes, Chris, I got over 150 doors. You can imagine how many of these postcards I get. He's like, I just picked yours because I like the little smiley face you put on it. That's what he told me. Yeah. I send a postcard that has a smiley face like this, and it says, I'm surprised you haven't called yet. That's what it says, you know?
Okay. You don't have one of those laying around, do you?
Actually, I do in the living room. I'll text her and tell her to bring it to me real quick.
Okay.
I use Yellow Letters Complete. And it's just one of their typical marketing pieces.
Oh, okay. What's the name of the service?
It's yellowletterscomplete.com.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm texting her real quick. Bring me a postcard from mail. So yeah, so that one, when the guy called me, I did my numbers and I figured that the ARV was about 300,000. It was a duplex in San Bernardino. And we went with our normal, 70% minus repairs, minus whatever. And he just, wouldn't even entertain it. And somehow we ended up meeting at 230, which seemed really thin considering the place needed a lot of work. But I just thought that because it was a duplex, maybe we could sell it to a buy and hold investor that would, want to keep it long term. And that's exactly what happened. We started doing a little bit of networking from the last real estate meeting. We met a few buy and hold investors. I sent it out to like a few people. One guy just jumped right on it. We ended up selling that one for $255. So we actually made $25,000 on that one, which was better than the first deal.
Oh wow, yeah, it was. Yeah, a little better than the first one. Okay.
The third one came from a pre-foreclosure list because we started by like the third or fourth month. We started splitting up the mail and doing like, I would say 80% absentee owners and another 20% going to pre-foreclosures. The problem with we were running into with that list was it was just kind of hard to, whenever we would order the list with high equity, there just wasn't that many of them.
Okay, I see what you're saying. And then the fourth one.
I'm sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you fine. Okay.
Yeah, so the third one was a pre-foreclosure is in Ukaipa. That was a typical straight up deal. They were kind of in a jam, we did that one. I think we ended up making like 14,000 on that one.
How much equity did they have? What were the numbers on it?
Let's see. The ARV was like 250. They were, like a month away from losing the place. We put it under contract for 175 actually. And then we started trying to sell it and we were running into the fact that we just couldn't get like a high enough offer. One guy offered us like 180. So we ended up going back at her and just kind of saying like, hey, we can do it, but we need a little bit better of a price. We ended up renegotiating with her and got it down to 166. And she was happy because she had like, even at the 166, she still walked away with like $100,000. So she had the place for a long time.
Oh, really? Wow. So she had that much equity and was about to lose it. Wow.
Yeah. What happened was apparently she inherited 2 houses from her parents or whatever. And I guess she was struggling one way or another. And so she was planning on selling that one to go live into the other one and pay it off that she had. But I think they had like, her husband was sick and they weren't working. They just had a lot of problems. But in the end, it was a win-win though, because we ended up closing that one literally like in 10 days. It was like, boom. And so she was happy. Everybody was happy. I had to go down there and give her like $1,000 up front to help them out, like while we were in the process of things, but it worked out good. That was the smallest one we did.
Yeah, I had a similar deal like that when I first got started. And this lady initially, when she inherited the property from her parents, she didn't owe anything. And she went out and got just a small loan for $25,000. The house was worth about $150. And she couldn't make the payments anymore. She wasn't even living there. When we went in the house, she was using it as storage. It was 4,600 square feet.
Oh, and wow.
You couldn't even, it wasn't really nasty, but it was so much stuff in there, mainly clothes, that you couldn't even see the floor throughout the entire house. You were walking on clothes, So anyway, long story short, that was one of the only seller that I've had to ever trip about, how much money my partner and I make. I brought one of my friends in because initially she wanted like $100,000. He talked her down to 50, right?
Oh.
But it took 6 months to close the deal because he thought we could get a loan and get the whole 150 out of it. And, so anyway, so once he let me take it over, after 6 months of dealing with it, he was giving them money the whole time. We closed it in 2 weeks and we split, $30,000 on that particular deal or whatever. So, but anyway, but she was pissed because he had given her so much money over that 6 month time period. All of that was being subtracted from what she was supposed to have gotten. So when she only got 8,000 and both of us got like 15 each, well, he actually got more than that because a lot of that was coming off of her money or whatever. And she was just tripping when I made it to the closing. His butt didn't even come to the closing, and she was just clowning. And so it was on a Friday. The closing attorney had already made a special exception for us to do it after 5 p.m. And she was like, well, I'm not going to do it. Well, he said, if we don't close it today, we're not going to be able to close the money. She was not going to leave that closing without a check. So we closed it. So boom. But anyway, this is not my story. This is your story. So on to the fourth one.
Yeah, every one of these deals, they all have interesting stories, don't they?
Oh, yeah. That's why they're motivated, man.
By the way, she just brought me the postcard. This is the one we use from Yellow Letters Complete. It's just like a neon letter.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's simple. Okay.
Yeah, very simple. But a lot of people that call me, they make comments about the smiley face. They just say, I get these postcards all the time, but I like yours because of the face, And I mean, it works good. We get a good response. But anyways, yeah, so that was deal 3. The fourth deal was basically like a home run before the apartments. The fourth deal was from absentee owner in LA County, which I live in San Bernardino County, which is not quite as expensive as LA County. And so this guy called us, he basically just told me straight out that he had a few rental properties in LA. And apparently what he wanted to do was he had one that he wanted to sell and do a 1031 exchange on because he wanted to buy a house for his daughter that lived here in Riverside, which is actually where I live, coincidentally. And when I was talking to him, I asked him about the house. He told me that it was just really beat up, that, pretty much been neglected the whole time he's owned it. And I asked him straight out, I says, well, what do you think it would take to fix that place? And he was like, oh, it'd probably be, every bit of $100,000. He's like, it needs everything, everything you could think of it needs, right? I said, okay. We did some numbers, and I actually made him an offer just right on the phone without even, looking at the place for $400,000. He actually said yes, right? And he says, okay, he happened to be like literally 5 minutes from my office where he lived. Normally I would just send the contract through DocuSign or something, but I says, I'll just take it to you right now. We'll link it up and we'll get rolling. Cause I knew it was a deal, right? So he goes, okay, cool. So we hung up, and I'm already like, doing the money dance because I knew I had a home run. And about 10 minutes later, he called me back. He goes, oh man, I made a big mistake. He's like, I talked to my daughter. He's like, I think the place is actually worth a lot more than I thought. And he's like, we're going to have to get a couple other bids from people. He's like, I have more postcards. I'm going to call some other people. So at first I just said, oh man, I didn't want to like piss him off or nothing. I said, okay, call some other people and call me back. I let him go, and I waited about 5 minutes. Then I just called him and I says, look, man, I was like, you called me first. We had a deal. Let's just give me a chance to counter you, and let's make it work, So we ended up going up to 475, right?
What was the ARV on it, you thought?
750.
Okay.
Yeah. And what's crazy is this is in LA, okay? It's a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, 1,100 square foot dilapidated shack. I mean, it's an ugly little house in Echo Park, which out there things are just expensive. So, and to be honest, when I was making the deal, I didn't even know if I could sell it because, all the houses I do around here, they've all been like ARV of 300,000 or less,
Mm-hmm.
I thought, bigger houses, bigger money, right? So I ended up going down to his house, got the contract. Then I was like, okay, now we got to sell it. So I sent it to a couple other wholesalers that I know that I've like, one of them is the guy I actually did. He's actually the guy that brought me the buyer on the first deal we did, the one we did the video. So I called him. I says, hey, do you have anybody you think would buy this place? And 5 minutes later, he's like, oh, I got a guy that'll buy it for sure. He's like, well, what's my cut? So I says, I'll just give you 20% of however much you could sell it for, rather than trying to argue back and forth about it. So, I mean, I'm not kidding, Ty, like 10 minutes later, we had an offer for 535. So yeah, we sent it over to the escrow. That one took like almost a full 30 days to close because the buyer was getting like a hard money loan, but it closed. The check was $60,000. We had to give him 20%. So he got 12,000. And then my partner and I got 48,000, and everybody won on that one too.
So 21.5,
25,
25, 14,
and then 48,000.
and then 48, and then now.
Well, before the apartments, there was one more, and that's the one I ended up keeping, the rental property I told you about.
Yeah, the one you texted me about today? Okay.
Yeah, that one came in. It was, I figured the ARV was about 150, and we put it under contract for 107. I sent it out to a few people. We had offers for like 115, 116, but it was too thin. I just decided I was going to keep that one and add it to my portfolio. And as I text you today, I just got it appraised. It appraised at 171. But I'm not flipping that one. But still, we got it from the same marketing batch, you know, so I could have flipped it.
I got you. All right. So those were great stories. But we got the cake, no icing. So let's get the icing.
All right. So with the apartments, this was another interesting deal. So it came from the pre-foreclosure list. Guy called. Basically, he inherited the place also, couldn't keep up with it, couldn't maintain it, and it was just a big problem for him. And it was in pre-foreclosure, obviously, like about a month away from getting foreclosed. And at first, is in LA, and I have a few rentals personally, and I've been in the market for more rentals myself. So I didn't even think about flipping this place in the beginning. I was just thinking maybe I could actually buy this place and add it to my rentals, and because I want units, you know. So I looked it up online, but I was having a hard time getting a valuation on it because it was 4 buildings in LA. It was like 8 or 9 units total, or 2, 4, 6, 8, 8 units total. And for whatever reason, when I was putting in the address, I couldn't get like a hit on all of them. It was just popping up like some of them. So I didn't even know what to offer the guy, but I knew I wanted them. I knew it was in LA, and I just thought to myself, well, shit, anything in LA is over $1 million, So before I ever went down there, I made him an offer of $700,000. And so he says, well, why don't you come check them out? And I says, I usually don't even go view a property unless we have a signed agreement. I don't waste my time going back and forth. But after about a day of going back and forth, he finally just said, hey, after I pay off my mortgage, if you give me $750, that's basically a number that'll work for me. He's like, that'll get me to pay off my mortgage and have enough money left to do whatever he needed to do. So when I made the deal, I was still thinking of buying this to keep them, So I says, okay, I'm doing my numbers, trying to figure out what the rents were versus what I'm going to pay, how much my down payment's going to be, what my mortgage is going to be. I wasn't even thinking about flipping them. So I agreed to do the $750. I just knew that one way or another I'd make it work with the rents, because rents are high in LA. I don't know, for everybody listening out there, I mean, in LA, like a 1 bedroom, 1 bath is like $1,500 a month. It's like really expensive, sometimes more than that, So we wrote it up. I went down to go see the place. It was in really, 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 really bad shape. But I didn't care, I just figured, hey, this is part of the game. A buddy of mine, once again, the same guy that I did the first deal with, the other wholesaler, I gave him a call and I said, hey, do you know anybody that can give me like a desktop appraisal on this place? Because I actually had called an agent friend of mine, actually 2 agent friends of mine I called, and both of them couldn't give me a straight answer. One guy goes, well, got to be over $1 million, but, I'm thinking, 1 million, 1.1. The other guy says, yeah, I don't know, maybe 800,000. And I'm thinking, no, it's got to be more than that. Because in LA, like I told you, that one house we just flipped was a little house for $750, right?
Yeah.
So my wholesaler buddy, he says, yeah, I know a guy. I'll look it up and I'll get back to you. And he never got back to me for like, I don't know, maybe a week. And I was already like in escrow, going through the motions to get my loan and to buy the place. Well, he called me back and he said, hey, he's like, that place is worth 1.5, 1.6. We should just flip it. And I'm like thinking to myself, hey, shit, we should. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking, no, there's no way. I mean, the place is in rough shape. And he goes, man, I think we can flip it. He goes, I know, he knew a buyer that was a big time Chinese investor from Beverly Hills that was just eating stuff up out here. And I said, well, yeah, I go, show it to him, let's see if we can do it. So one thing led to another. We ended up hooking up with this Chinese investor's agent. So now there's like 4 people involved on this deal. And we go to the property. He loves it. He wants it. They gave me an offer on the spot for 1.5, but subject to an inspection and appraisal and this, that, and the other. And we knew it wasn't going to come in at that because it was really, really bad shape, right? But I talked to my escrow guy and I'm like, hey, can you do a double escrow for me on this? And he says, yeah, no problem. And the buyer was actually using a traditional lender. So my escrow called the lender. The lender said, yeah, we're cool with it, but everybody's got to know what's going on. Can't be no trickery of any kind or whatever. So we said, all right, no problem. So at this point, we have both escrows open, going concurrently. I'm already celebrating, thinking everything's good. The guy put up a $45,000 EMD, and I'm just waiting, Well, once they did the appraisal, and the inspection, everything changed. The inspection.
You said 45,000 EMD. For those that don't know, that means earnest money deposit. So go ahead.
Yeah, earnest money deposit, 45 grand. So the first thing that came through was the inspection. And come to find out, it actually wasn't 8 units. It was actually only 6, but someone added some unpermitted stuff. That changed everything right then and there, because I didn't do any of my due diligence on that. I just knew that at 750 it was a deal, And so that was the first wrench that got thrown. Now everybody was like, oh man, this isn't permitted, so we can't count this, and everything's all jacked up. And it was done so long ago, they were having a hard time getting like stuff from the city and like all kinds of stuff, right? So I knew they were going to come back and try to lower me. I didn't care. They were waiting for the appraisal. So when the appraisal got done, it was the same issue. The appraiser actually called me, and he was like, man, we can't even get an accurate appraisal for this thing, because apparently it was there's 4 buildings, but they were on 2 parcels, and so we just thought it was like one lot. He was saying, hey, if you can have the city combine them to one, it'll raise the value, and just all kinds of drama, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So at this point, I'm sitting here like, okay, what's going to happen? I don't know. And I guess the bank ended up on the buyer's end, pulled out and said, this place is too beat up, too much drama. We can't do a loan on it. Right. Well, the buyer had a lot of money, so he could have did a cash deal, but he was kind of like giving us a hard time, like whether he was going to do it or not. And I was already coming to the end of my escrow, and I knew that whether this guy bought him or not, I wanted to keep him anyways. So that gave me a little bit of peace of mind for myself. So what I ended up doing was, at the last minute, I called a guy that I met online who was a big time investor here in Riverside. And, I sent him a message because I was just thinking to myself, man, now I'm gonna have to get a loan. I'm gonna have to close for reals and do all this. I was wondering if he knew any hard money guys. So I sent him a message. Hey, do you know anybody that would do a loan on this place? And it's just crazy how things work, because it was literally like, I can't make this up. This is on the Bible, Ty. I mean, it's like 5 minutes later, he's like, I got a guy that will give you the money right now. He's like, it's a private money investor. So he put me in touch with this guy named Earl. And, like I say, I can't make this up. I mean, no appraisal, no credit check, no nothing. Never met the guy.
True hard money. He based it on the property. He knew he could not lose.
Yeah. Within 30, I mean, this is no BS. Within 30 minutes, he called me and said, I'll give you 650,000, and then you got to put up the other 100. Okay. So at that point, I was celebrating, because I was figuring of doing a traditional bank loan anyways. I had funds to do the down payment regardless. So I knew I was going to be safe. But for whatever reason, I just thought, let me see if I can come up with the other 100 without having to tap my own resources. So I have another, a guy I know very well in my tool business. I just went to him and I said, hey, you want to make the easiest $10,000 you've ever made in your life ever? I said, loan me 100 grand and I'll give you back 110 in about 2 weeks, So I showed him the deal and he's like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. This guy has a lot of money, right? So I ended up putting the whole thing together with no money. One guy gave me 100, the other guy gave me the 650. I closed on my side of the transaction. After that, the ball was in my court, Then I was basically telling the agents or the buyer's agent, like, hey, like, I already closed on it. So if the guy don't want it, well, I'll just keep it. I didn't act desperate, you know what I mean? So in the middle of all this, the appraisal finally comes in. And guess what they appraised it at? You'll never believe.
I think you told me, but tell them.
They appraised it at 780, okay? And I had just bought it for 750, right?
Oh, and no, I thought, oh, wow. I thought, okay, yeah, okay. No, you didn't tell me that. Okay, I was going to say something else. Go ahead.
The appraiser, luckily, I mean, he was a nice guy, and he wrote a comment on the report saying, due to the fact there's 2 parcels and 2 units are unpermitted and we can't get accurate comps, blah, 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 we have to appraise it at this. But then he put a notation, if one were to combine the parcels, do renovations, yada, yada, it would probably be upwards of 1.5 million, right?
Okay.
So after that, the buyers came back at me at $1 million. I told them no. Then they came back at, I can't even remember, it was $1 million. We just kept going back and forth, but we ended up meeting at 1.16. And that's basically what the deal closed at. And out of that, I ended up giving 2 agents 2%, 2% each. And then my buddy, the wholesaler that brought me the agents, I ended up giving him $15,000 for bringing it all together.
Yeah. Okay. So so I think the check that you sent a copy of, or it was a total like 484 or something like that, or what was it?
I thought you were going to post it on here. You have it. I think it's 434,000.
Yeah, I'll whenever I edit this, I'll put it up or whatever.
Yeah, it was.
But your final take after paying everybody was
about 300,000.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
It was 430,573 was the check, and out of that, I paid 110,000 back to one investor, 15,000 to the other wholesaler, and that's it. Because the agent's money was already out of that.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, roughly 300. I think it was. I think you said it was 273 something exactly, or right at that.
I think it's more than that. Yeah, I think it's more than that because it's 430. I'm looking at it here, 430,573, and I paid back 110,000 to one guy and 15 to the other, so 125. So about 305.
Okay.
It was a nice deal.
So let's go 21.5, 25, 14, 48. At 305, I'm sure you already know what the numbers are on there. If you don't, I guess I add them up.
It's a lot.
That's a lot, man. So that's basically what? So you closed this, last week? So that's basically 7 months in the game and almost $500,000. If my numbers are right. Right around 450 or something.
I got a calculator right here. Let's see. We got 21.5, 25, 14, 48, 305. Yeah, 413,500.
Okay, so
8 months ago, I didn't even know what wholesaling was. I never even heard of it.
Hey, man, you're gonna make me move to California, man. God, dog. Woo.
Yeah.
So, oh, wow. So, yeah, man, those are some interesting stories, man. I know when you reached out to me about it or whatever, and I guess the main thing is that, and I try to tell people, and I'm not lying about this stuff, you had a great deal. It wasn't hard to find the money, you know.
No.
You know what I'm saying? You could have, and that's the only, did you even tap into any other investors on it, or you just was that confident the Chinese investor was going to do something?
I just knew he was going to do something because when we met at the apartment, his agents and stuff were there, but I met him there and I could see it in his face. I mean, he wanted it, and I had an inside tip because one agent in the transaction was off the record, the one that was representing me. And basically my wholesaler buddy, he brought me to this agent, and that agent knew the agent that knew the buyer. Okay. So in the transaction, it was just the one agent and the buyer, but my agent was kind of like an inside source. And he told me, he's like, no, he's like, this guy's big time. He just bought a place in West LA for $7 million. And he's got this big, huge portfolio. And thing is in LA right now, units are expensive, in any condition. So, and there's not a lot of them on there. Like if you go on LoopNet and just look around, there's not a lot of stuff in LA in this class. Everything's either really, really big or really, really small, so it's hard to find stuff like this. I felt confident that he was going to buy him, but I also felt that the deal was so good. If he backed out and I had to keep him, I wouldn't have a hard time renting him out and then selling him myself if I needed to,
I got you. So you were good either way. You were prepared to keep those if need be. Right. And so I guess that's the biggest thing there. So, but wow, there it is, people. I'm Chris. He came back to share. It's basically his last 6 months or so since he's been in the business, a total of 7 almost. And I can just tell you, this is not usual. But as I've said over the years, before I even had someone from California to do any interviews, and they were saying, well, the prices of a 2-bedroom in California in the hood will be this. I said, it doesn't matter. He said, I always explain, the only reason those prices are the way that they are is because people can afford to pay that. Yeah. So you and I'll do the same thing, but your check, like I got a closing Monday, my check is only going to be $8,000. We did the same thing or whatever, but because you're in a different market, that's going to probably be 25 grand normally for you, you know? So, but at the end of the day, you know, these are no numbers to sneeze at, and, you know, 5 grand a month normally changes most people's situation or whatever. But, you know, we're talking about a lot larger numbers, but, you know, but that's real estate. That's the great thing about it. But, man, I really appreciate you taking the time out. Took us a little bit to get together. You know, we tried to get together last week, but, you know, a couple of technical deals. I think you had lost your charger or whatever, but for your laptop. So anything you want to share, man, before we move on?
Well, I mean, just for anybody listening, the only thing I could say is, you know, just get out there and do it. I think I said that on the last video too. 8 months ago, I didn't even know what wholesaling was. I tripped across these videos because I was trying to figure out how to rehab. Like I was looking up like fixing and flipping, and then I came across this, but it's real. It works. Doesn't matter where you're at. But you know, you do got to spend some money on marketing, and it is a business. You can't just send out one batch of postcards and then, you know, if you don't get a deal, throw your hands up. You know, you got to keep it going. And yeah, that's my best advice is get the marketing going and just jump in the game.
Which I know that most people probably can't afford this, but the point you just made, you have to keep marketing. You have to believe in the process. And everybody's financial situation is different, but you have to do what you have to do. If you have to pick up a second job or whatever to feed your business, it'll be worth it at some point because it'll compensate you well back. Because you all had a dry run on direct mail for a minute, right?
Yeah, I could even share those numbers too with everybody just for what it's worth. But for those 6 months, we spent $20,200 on postcards. And granted, you know, the apartment deal was like a home run, but even without that deal, there was still plenty of money made that offset that. But for those of you that are listening, just to share how it went down, you know, the first batch of letters we sent out, we spent like $1,700 on yellow letters. We got that first deal for $21,000. And we just thought, oh, this is it. You send out one batch of letters, you make 20 grand and do it all over again. I mean, I was ready to like, you know, shut my other business down and do this, right? But out of that 21,000 we made, we were spending about, you know, 1,000 here and there every other week trying to get the next deal. And that 20,000 just kind of went like this until we got the next deal. So then by the time I got the second deal, I started thinking, well, wait a minute, you know, doesn't matter if we made 20 grand on this deal. Then I just put 15,000 back into marketing and we barely got the next deal. I started realizing that it is a business. There's going to be cash flow ups and downs. What we ended up doing in the end was ordering like a list of leads and then just committing to doing like $1,000 a week in direct mail and then just keeping it very consistent to get the deal flow in. And we wanted to see where we were at in 6 months. And, you know, like I said, the apartment deal, that was kind of a fluke, you know, but it's great. It happened. But even without that deal, the numbers were so strong. I mean, it pays for years worth of postcards, right? So now what we're doing, we actually just restarted our marketing again, is we're doing, I ordered a list of, I think about 28,000 leads, a new list, and we broke it up and we're doing about 3,000 postcards a week. And this is barely week 2. You know, we took a little bit of time off after this last deal, but we're just going to stick to it week by week by week and just kind of weather the storm. Might take, you know how it is, could take 4, 5, 6 weeks before you get a deal. You just got to always reinvest back into it and, you know, think positive. That's the biggest thing.
Oh, yeah. As I say, trust the process. But again, Chris, we're glad you shared your story with us again, man. And, you know, me and you'll be chatting on some other stuff or whatever. But I'm tapping into that California market, as you already know I'm trying to. So
it's a good market.
Somebody on the ground, they can make it happen. So that's the main thing. But again, man, we appreciate you taking out your time and sharing your success. You know, hopefully it'll help others.
Yeah, I hope so.
All righty, man. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you on the flip side.
Yes, sir.